One, two, three.
Greetings, fans. This is it. We're just days away from the 2014 Championship Spectacular. I'm Jay Beaman, alongside Tito McGee, Xzono Jr. This is the Series Insider. Now, after the dust settled at Stage 3, we had Gregory Jovi's Ego Busters and the Blacklist advancing to the finals. These two teams have been targeting each other all year. Now they're going to go head-to-head in a 4-on-4 elimination tag team match for the Tammy Jovi Memorial Cup. Got a lot of ground to cover here. Drew, I'm going to start with you. Who do you see hoisting the cup at the end of the season?
Well, it's tough. I don't think we're going to see a repeat from Stage 3. I don't think we're going to see Jovi hosting that trophy over his head like I think he did, or at least said he was going to. I got the Blacklist. And the Blacklist is a team, I think, that has a good balance between the athletes. I think there's four very, unique athletes between them. They're hard to prepare for in a given night, trying to split them up one-on-one. They're also the team responsible for the first loss for the Ego Busters this year, and they're the ones, I think, inside the head of Jovi's guys. And I think there's going to be some changes that you'll allude to here in a second with the Ego Busters, so they're not going to have their fit uniform team. I know we talked about that last time with the Resurgence, and I think their inconsistency with their roster hurt them in the end, and I think we'll see the same thing with the Ego Busters.
Those are very solid points, and I've gone with the Blacklist as well on our last time we've met here. I'm going to switch my pick. I'm going to go with the Ego Busters because this is their best element of competition. There's 4-on-4. They're all out there. They have Greg Jovi ringside, so they can, sneak attack. They can, attack the guys who are not the legal man in the ring. They can do whatever they want, and they will use every trick in the book, especially Greg Jovi, to make sure they win. And especially the fact that his name is on the cup. Greg Jovi's mother, Tammy Jovi, her name is on that cup. There is that element of him wanting that trophy. And I think he's going to pull out all the stops and do what he can to bring that home.
Dan Walsh is going to be a busy man. He's going to be pulling double duty. How is that going to affect his focus? I think that's a good question that can only be answered at Stage 4.
That's a good question. Is Dan Walsh going to be distracted by this huge match with Colt Cabana earlier in the evening? The other thing is, as Drew alluded to, we just found out just in the past few days, the Greg Jovi press conference, Gary J suffered a concussion. He's not going to be able to pass protocol to be back in the ring by January 10th. So Gary J is out for the Championship Spectacular. They do have a replacement. He's the 2014 King of Des Moines tournament winner in 3XW. It's Hype Gotti. Mm-hmm. Now, I've seen a little bit of Hype. He's pretty good. He fits in with the MO of the Ego Busters, but he's a very talented individual. How do you see that affecting Dan Walsh's earlier match, Hype Gotti, no Gary J? How do you see that affecting your pick?
Maybe Dan Walsh will be distracted by the Colt Cabana match that he's in earlier in the night, but you got a lot of talent coming in with the Ego Busters. You have the Rebel Jeremy Wyatt, you have Brandon Espinosa, Hype Gotti, who, like we said, the King of Des Moines. He ran the gauntlet in 3XW and became the King of Des Moines. He can bring a lot to the table, and of course you have Greg Jovi, who he's gonna be that trickster that he is, and he's going to do the things that he does.
Trickster is a nice way to put it. But I think the one thing you can't, disregard in this kind of format, in this kind of series, is what we've seen is the cohesiveness of teams. And this is the one time you're going to see it this entire year. All four members of one team facing another. The only time you're going to see it. What's the biggest difference is it's no longer Espinosa one-on-one. Guys like Espinosa and Wyatt, one-on-one in matches, are probably the better athletes. I'm not going to doubt that. But in a team unit, especially when you're bringing in an unknown, at least in your team, Hype Gotti, obviously known here in Iowa and Des Moines, but is he known at PWCS in St. Louis, Anarchy, that area? Whereas a lot of these guys in the Blacklist have been wrestling one another, or at least been with one another different at Feds. So It's going to be interesting how much chemistry plays into it. Talent is certainly on the Ego Buster side, but you can't. It's a tag team match. You got to have 4 working members together who are on the same page, willing to get the tag out, willing to keep the fresh guy in, and willing to put their egos aside.
It brings up a good point. You talk about the team chemistry. We've only seen Nate Red Wing of the Blacklist once, and that was at Stage 2. Do you see him as a good fit? We haven't seen him as much as JoJo and Outcast and Makazi all together. Do you see him as a good fit for those other 3?
Yes, just because of his size. He gives them the element that they don't have. I think that's where the cohesiveness comes in. It's like an atom, where you have the negative and the positive charges attract. And he's what's the difference. He's the one guy in that ring who's over 250, 300 pounds. He's a big beast. He's a big monster. He could be the big difference, and I think that makes the unit more cohesive because he fills the need for them. He's the big bruiser who at the end of that match could come in, clear house, and the Ego Busters might be all laying on their backs in pain.
Okay, we talked a little bit about Walsh and Cabana. Tito, you got a pick for that match? Who do you see coming out on top?
You know, I think it will probably be, even though I went with the Ego Busters in the 4-on-4, I want to say it's Colt Cabana because, you know, he's done it longer. He's the expert. He's the pro. A lot of people are probably going to be cheering for him because, you know, Dan Walsh is part of those sleazy Ego Busters. People will enjoy Colt, and I think the crowd would be on his side.
Well, Colt is going to be a factor in this match. I think I have to agree with you that Colt is probably the favorite. I'll probably pick him just because I think the Ego Busters are going to be more focused about winning the championship. I think Colt is more of he's obviously a big attraction, and he's a well-seasoned veteran. He's someone who is, you know, the man when it comes to international wrestling. You pick one guy around the world who people want to see from town to town, it's the athlete Colt Cabana. I don't doubt him in a singles match. Now, if Colt was in that tag team, I think something would be different because you have to rely on others. So I hate to make everything sound like it's in stereo and we're all agreeing with one another, but Colt Cabana wins the singles match.
You know, I'm going to disagree. You talk about everybody agreeing at this table. I'm going to disagree. I'm going to say Dan Walsh wins that match. You know, Greg Jovi, I don't think he was real happy at first that Dan Walsh kind of went behind his back to accept the open contract to face Colt. But then I think the wheels started turning for Jovi, and he sees this as a big coup for his team if one of his guys can beat an international superstar. So I think, like you said about the main event, I think Greg Jovi is going to pull out all the stops to get that win over Colt Cabana. All right, you know, at this point we would have talked about our other marquee matchup, which was going to be the Team Anarchy grudge match. As we heard a couple weeks ago, Pierre Abernathy, Evangelistico have pulled out of the event. They don't want anything to do with Matt Fitchett and Davey Vega inside the ring. They said they're not signing the contract. They're not going to be there. It's not even going to be like Stage 3 where they show up and cause problems. They're not even going to be in Granite City. Instead, we've got Matt Fitchett, Davey Vega going up 2-on-2 with the Viking War Party. What do you guys think of that match? What do you think's going on here?
It's, you know, as much as I love the teams that we're doing, the whole thing that PWCS stands for, I love the Team Anarchy thing because, you know, from the beginning it was just a train wreck. And that, you know, with Evangelistico and his whereabouts at Stage 1, with Stage 2, and how Alex Castle was thrown into the mix, and them throwing the match for Matt Fitchett in Stage 3, the fines, and them, you know, causing a train wreck in PWCS. It was really great. It, you know, it was. I was on the edge of my seat.
You like the drama?
Yes, and I was really wanting to see them go, you know, have the brotherly beatdown, as they said. And it's unfortunate that they decided to tuck their tail between the legs and run away. So I was hoping to see that happen.
Well, it doesn't surprise me. I'm not shocked. I saw them on commentary, and I can see they're shaking a little bit when they talk about that because they realize that at PWCS they're in Fitchett's home. They're in Vegas home. They're in Granite City. They're no longer across the river in St. Louis. So they're kind of out of their element a little bit as it is. So I think they're talking a big game, and I think ultimately they realized how much that crowd was going to be behind Fitchett and Vega in that match. They didn't realize we're going to have a packed house coming up here on the 10th, and to have that many hometown supporters from one team, that can really get into your head. And I think as much as a talented tag team as they are, in fact, I think they're the most talented tag team that we have signed on our roster right now. I guess we don't know if they're signed now. We don't know what their contract status is. But they were the most talented team, but they couldn't show it once. And I think they just realized that they can't wrestle here in Granite City. It's something that's in their heads, and unfortunately it got so bad that we couldn't see a match that a lot of people wanted to see, in a very physical match that I think a lot of guys, well, I don't know if PWCS officials would have signed off on, because it would have been intense.
And you're right, we're not 100% sure what their contract status is. You know, the league has called for Pierre Abernathy to sell the team. Has he sold it? Is there a new owner? Will we see a new owner at the Championship Spectacular? There are a lot of questions surrounding that team as an organization, not even the players involved, but just the organization. Is there going to be a Team Anarchy next season?
Nevertheless, it's going to be a great match. Davey Vega, Matt Fitchett versus the Viking War Party. You saw at Stage 3 how exciting the Viking War Party is. Chairs got thrown into the
I almost
ring.
got my head taken off.
I saw that. I was worried for your safety. And then after that, you got a low blow from Jovi.
Thanks for reminding me.
Yeah, are you okay on that one?
I'm good.
Okay.
I think I saw him walk in with the ice between his legs.
Yes,
it's been a while, but I think he's okay now.
Anyway, it's going to be an exciting match with Vega, Fitchett, and the Viking War Party.
I got one more match that I want to bring to your guys' attention, because there was just a stipulation added just in the last week. Stephen Kennedy, no singles wins yet this season. In order to correct that, he's decided to challenge our top free agent, the 3-0 Dangerous Devereaux. Devereaux accepted the match, but only on the condition that if he wins, he will become the captain of the Resurgence. So going into Season 2 here, we might actually see two different teams under new leadership if Devereaux beats Kennedy. What do you think? Devereaux can beat Kennedy? Do you think Kennedy is going to be able to turn his season around?
Well, I think it's all a matter if Kennedy wants to win. And I don't mean that in a way that he's not a competitor, but is his heart into it. I think all season we've seen him get challenged and get thrown in the match against Makazi, you saw those emotions coming out. Is he the same guy he was before he was considering retirement? And that's what the whole season story about him and the idea of the Resurgence has been about. We see this new look Stephen Kennedy, a guy who's a little bit nicer on the surface, a guy who plays by the rules now, versus the guy who would be combative and start yelling at fans. It's a matter if he really wants to keep up and if his heart's in it. I think he's talented enough, and I think he's going to go out there and give us a show like no one else can. He's going to show why he's so revered in the St. Louis area. But the question really remains is he going to be sick and tired of trying to play the nice guy? In order to get over a guy like Devereaux, who seemingly is willing to do a lot to win, and we don't know anything about. See, he has nothing to lose, Devereaux does. Whereas Kennedy, if he loses, his career, at least with PWCS, might be over. Who knows? There's a lot of questions in the air. And I think Kennedy, if he can right the ship, so to speak, I think if he can get in the right mentality or go back to his old mentality, I don't know. I think we saw a lot of frustration against Makazi in Stage 3.
Tito, I'm going to actually ask you a slightly different question.
Okay.
Not who do you see winning, but let's say Devereaux does win. How do you see him leading a team next season?
Well, I think it would be very difficult because, he added that stipulation of becoming the captain, and, it took a whole bunch of us to understand what he was saying. He wrote a long note with like hieroglyphics and these gibberish words that we couldn't understand. So how can he lead a team when what he sent to us was completely gibberish, So I think there's that communication element. I've never talked to him. I've seen him in the back, and I'm afraid of him. Yeah, he sits in the corner, and I'm very afraid to go near him. And also, will his team be afraid of him?
Well, let me just say this. As a commentator, it's hard for me to say this, but sometimes actions speak louder than words. And if you keep winning and your team can see you, and you have enough experienced veterans like the Resurgence does, who knows? Anyone. I'm not saying anyone could lead that team, but someone with his kind of athletic ability could.
All right. Good talk, guys. Got big show, January 10th. Front row tickets are sold out, but if you want to attend, we still got plenty of general admission seats. Doors open at 6:30, Tri-City YMCA, Granite City, Illinois. You can pick up those tickets at brownpapertickets.com, as well as at the YMCA or at Game Busters on Madison Avenue. We have special guest Colt Cabana going one-on-one with Dan Walsh. The Viking War Party battles Davey Vega and Matt Fitchett. And your main event for the evening, the PWCS Championship, will be decided between the Ego Busters and the Blacklist. Be there January 10th, 7 p.m. to find out who takes home the Big Gold Cup for the very first time.